and welcome to Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion with me, Pastor Amanda. We are diving into chapter 12 of Exodus. And what we have, so we have experienced the plagues so far, and now we are, in a sense, at the final threat. But before we can get there, we have this interesting interlude or explanation that is included in the storyline. And what we have really here is the institution of the Passover meal that will happen for generations to come. So chapter 12 is kind of a longer chapter, and yet it includes a couple of different institutions, ordinances, things that need to be done for future generations. And it's not really completely focused on the what's happening right now, though it is important that the people do prepare in this way in the now. So it begins with, at this point in time, that in a sense, their calendar begins here. Because this month shall mark for you the beginning of months. So we have this sense of now being able to track time and tracking seasons and when we can start finding festivals. And what we're going to find that throughout Exodus, we will begin to see the different institutions of Jewish celebrations and holidays. And we can see where Christian celebrations have been transformed out of these holidays and holy days as they are. And so we're going to kind of see how that is part of our history too. So time is now being counted, and it says that a lamb shall be taken to be butchered for a family during this time. And then there's certain things they have to do. But one of the things I really find interesting in verse 4 is it says, if a household is too small for a whole lamb, it shall join in its closest neighbor in obtaining one. So there's this recognition about how expensive food is at that time. It's also recognizing that people need to come together and work together to ensure that everyone has the most for this season. And in this little sentence, of course, what pops into my head is Christmas. It's one of the times of the year that we're really good about making sure that every family has a meal, is able, or Thanksgiving is another one where we're always trying to include others beyond ourselves. And it's about thinking beyond ourselves within this, of who needs to be included in this celebration. So we see that right in here. And as it goes on, it talks about what kind and type of animal can be used. So it can be either a sheep or a goat. It has to be young, it has to be male, it has to be perfect. So we see some of those regulations or rules, guidelines being set up for what's to be done. And then how they will eat this lamb. It's really interesting because it says that you will eat it quickly. You will eat it fast. And you will also have it with unleavened bread, which it'll go into in just a minute again. And there's a sense that you're in a hurry. It's a recognizing that the Israelite people are preparing to leave Egypt. So they're doing this in a hurriedly way. Even to the point, the scripture tells us that you shall be there with your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat hurriedly. And so it's this recognition of that there is this movement that is going to happen upon this Passover that's going to happen. And this is where it also talks about how the blood of the lamb shall be put on the door posts, the posts on either side and above it. as a sign for the spirit to pass over the household and skip over it. And what's kind of interesting in this is that, in previous plagues, God was able to discern who the Israelites were and who the Egyptians were. Like, God didn't need a marker to not send the flies here or something like that. So it is kind of interesting. However, the other side of it is that this shows obedience to God, a submission to what God is doing, so that in order to have this Passover happen, there's I trust that God's going to do this, and so I will obey what's going to happen. And so it's in a sense also showing the Israelite people have to be part of this process of freeing themselves. It's not just God going to do all the work, but they also have to participate in it. And so we see that it's this kind of call and response, this mutual covenant that's being created between them. So something has to be done on their part to say that they are going to be part of this movement. So then the next thing it talks about is that there needs to be unleavened bread. Again, a sign of this hurried movement going out. Anybody who's eating leavened bread would be a sign of someone who's kind of still invested in the Egyptian way of life, who's not feeling that desire and that push to leave. And so these were ways of just, again, marking that you're one of the Israelites, you're one of the oppressed, and you want to get out of this. You don't want to be here anymore. And these were kind of signs and symbols that you're part of this group that's ready to leave Egypt. And then, and also in verse 14, it also tells us, and it's repeated a couple times, that this will be a day of remembrance for you. This is a story that needs to be passed down. It needs to be told to your children. It needs to be explained to those who are part of this. It's an ongoing theme that needs to be lived out in worship. And so we can begin to see in this meal a reflection of our own Christian tradition, of our own Eucharist. We begin to see how this is part of our history. Because if we know Eucharist or communion, sometimes as we better know it, was Jesus participating in the Passover meal. And as Christians have then taken that aspect. And so we see that this is part of our own history in this too, of this movement to get out of oppression and the meaning to all the different parts and pieces to our meal. As we continue on, we find out that just some more rules and regulations about how to live into this event. And then we find out that the kind of the angel of death sweeps through the land, and it happens at midnight. This is one of those kind of recognitions that Pharaoh was considered to be a sun god, S-U-N God, and was part of that. So when this happens at midnight, it's at the time that Pharaoh has no control, has no power. The sun is not out. He is not in his great mighty glory. And so we see that it's like at Pharaoh's weakest moment is when this happens. And we also find out that that's once it happens, there's this great weeping and wailing that goes across the Egyptian land. It's as if the Egyptians finally are experiencing the pain that the Israelites have been experiencing for hundreds of years. And so we just have this moment of where they're finally feeling it. And again, Pharaoh calls Moses and Aaron in the nighttime to come and speak to him. This is the moment where he is not in power, where mystery and chaos are all around them, and he no longer has the ability to rule over them. And so he releases them. He not only releases them, he kind of goes like he pushes them out now. Whereas he's been trying to hold on this whole time. He's now like, just go, just push him away in his language. Another little tidbit in this is that it also says that God, the Lord, not only came to overcome the Egyptian Pharaoh and his people and Pharisees, but also the gods of the Egyptians. So again, this goes back to idol worship, or I guess it goes forward to in the commandments. But there is a sense that these idols that the Egyptians have prevent them from being able to connect to the real creator, the true creator. And so God has to be able to overcome not only their civilization, but their gods, their religion, in a sense, to say, hey, this is how it goes. So that's kind of can get to sticky in there, but this kind of makes you aware of what's going on in here. And so finally, the people get to go with all of their stuff, their animals, their children. They're able to pack up and leave completely. And we are told that they live in, they were in captivity for 430 years. 430 years they were in captivity, and they were able to make it. So what's kind of interesting, 430 years in captivity and 40 years in the wilderness, it's hard on them. But they were able to do 430. So I think we'll see how that kind of plays out, how time feels differently depending on your situation. And so I think that's kind of interesting. We'll spend more time on that at a later time. And so at this point in time, the Passover has happened. And again, another little interesting part at the end of this is it talks to us about how outsiders can participate in this. But again, the only way that outsiders can participate in the Passover is if they completely kind of submit themselves to the culture, and that means they have to be circumcised. And so they have to show a sense of commitment to this group of people. They aren't allowed to just participate because they think it's great, but they have to fully submit, commit, obey God, and to be a part of this. And so it's just kind of these rules and guidelines. Like, this is how important it is. It's really important. And I think we can take time to say what's really important to us in our rituals, in our parts of worship. And I mean, I think just because this Sunday was supposed to become Communion Sunday, realizing how important that is for helping me know who I am and who I belong to, what I've come through, and everything, and how I'm not alone in that. And I think that's kind of what we can see out of this, the importance of these rituals that remind us of who we are, what we've come through, and what we have to gain by remembering. And it's just so important to remember. And so that's kind of what I got out of here today. Kind of a longer devotion than normal. So thanks for sticking in there with me. I hope you have a beautiful and warm and safe day. And we'll see you tomorrow with Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion.